going on, everybody? This is Lady Luck here again. All right. Y'all see the headline, the title, the thumbnail, and everything. I'm gonna be honest with you all. I'm not a huge fan of Candace Owens like that to the extent where I'm watching all of her content, but she seems to be making some international headlines on a lot of things. This girl is something else, okay? But I just want to point out the thumbnail that's on the video came from me just pausing this video here. She went on Piers Morgan and she gave her thoughts about the Iran-Israel conflict and, you know, World War III. I literally said the same thing. I have YouTube shorts where, I was on a panel with another fantastic content creator, Minion with Opinion. And it was four of us on the panel. While we were doing the show, that is when we found out that the U.S. had dropped missiles and stuff on Israel. On Iran. I'm sorry, on behalf of Israel. And what took me aback was, okay, Israel has nuclear weapons and the ability to do something like that themselves. Why is the U.S. doing that on their behalf? I will never understand. It was not like Israel was overpowered and could not launch a missile if they wanted to. And they're right next to them. So it just didn't make sense. And I still feel this way. There's a 1,000-year conflict that's been going on with Israel and many other countries, that comes down to faith and some land. So, with the U.S. getting involved in that, first thing they should have asked is, okay, why can't you all do this yourselves? Why y'all asking us to do this? So when the president discovered that Israel had still, even after saying, okay, I'll do this, and then y'all go to your room and go read a book and leave each other alone and leave the rest of us out of it, and let's have some peace in this situation. Israel was like, psych your mind. And then they went out and did something else that morning. And then, of course, that's when the president is on camera dropping the F-bomb because they don't know what the F they're doing. He was right in that sense. And I'm not a Republican or Democrat. I'm A for American. I was more irritated at learning that we still had our Americans over there in the embassy before the missiles were even launched. And the time frame they gave didn't match when the U.S. decided to do that. So I'm like, at least get our Americans up out of there first before you go do some nonsense like this. And then Israel couldn't do it on their own. Why now? Why couldn't they do it? Because they got weapons. They got, why couldn't they do it? That's no one seems to be wanting to answer that question. Why did we have to do it as the U.S.? Why couldn't they do that on their own? And then leave us alone. Leave us out of it. Leave us out of it. So she has some interesting thoughts. She's making headlines on a lot of things. I would love to read that subpoena she was served from Blake Lively. Deadpool, please tell your wife to stop cutting up because she acting up real bad right now. I love Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool, and he's been a fantastic move for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But Blake Lively, please go sit down somewhere, girl. Go to your room. So we're going to check out this video that Candace did her interview on, or I don't know if this debate or whatever it was, on Piers Morgan. Make sure you guys hit the like button and share this video. And we're going to have this conversation. Like I said, I'm not Democrat or Republican. I'm A for American. And I just want what's best for Americans. And leaving our Americans over there in an embassy where you plan on dropping a missile is the absolute worst thing you can do if you're trying to put America first. Hear me when I say we're putting America first, and yet you're leaving Americans in the embassy while you drop missiles days in advance when you said you would do it. And all for Israel, who has the ability to do it themselves. Could they not do this on their own? I'm just, can someone answer that? Please leave it in the comment section. Why is it that Israel could not have just dropped the missile themselves? That's all I want to know. I need an answer to that question. That's all I want to know. Why couldn't they do it themselves? The end. All right, moving on. So let's check this out. Like I said, make sure you guys hit the like button, share the video, subscribe here to the Lady Luck Club. We're trying to hit 30,000 subs by July 31st. Praying that God blesses this channel and allow it to grow. I also have a second channel, Tommy G Raw and Real, as a Tommy G Clipper. So more clips coming up. He's going to be dropping a new video as well that you guys definitely want to tune into. Very excited about that content that he has coming up. And of course, become a member. I'm going over exclusive lawsuits and documents that are being posted up to the members channel that you can get on the LLC readers level that you cannot find on the internet. So please consider becoming a member. Thank you all so much for all of your support. Let's get to it. Candace Owens, Piers Morgan, uncensored.
Treating you.
Motherhood is treating me great. I'm exhausted, as is to be expected with the newborn, but always a blessing.
Well,
the baby.
I wish you all the very best with that. Okay, let's talk about impending World War III, as you put it. You are implacably opposed to what both Israel and now the United States have done here. Why?
Yeah. Because, well, first and foremost, just on the MAGA movement level, Trump came out and he gave us a promise that we were not going to be involved in wars. And I'm going back to 2015. Why did people get so excited about Donald Trump, who was then an unlikely candidate, who was being smeared by the media as being Adolf Hitler? Well, it was because he recognized that the American people were being forgotten while we were giving billions of unaccounted billions, by the way, for these never-ending wars. And so it's one of the earliest reasons that people got behind him and got behind his vision. And so we're opposed to a regime change because America as a country has a lot of problems that need to be fixed here first. It's that simple.
Right, but it's not quite that simple. And I'll explain to you why. Because Donald Trump, I think he's not been inconsistent in the sense that in his first term.
Okay, so I think I don't want to. And here's my thoughts and opinion on this that we're all entitled to. Like I said, I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. When I stand before God on Judgment Day, like the rest of us that believe, especially if you're a true Christian, God will not be asking you if you voted for a Democrat or a Republican. God does not care about our politics. He cares about our actions and our thoughts and our words that all have power. Life and death is in the power of your tongue. I'm still having to be reminded of that every day. So, the idea that, once again, Israel could have done this themselves, but they wanted the U.S. to do it, is what's baffling to me personally the most. Why couldn't they do it? And why didn't we get our Americans out of the embassy, out of that area before that missile was dropped? That's the two main things that are so problematic. And no one wants a war, especially if you're talking about nuclear power here. No one wants that. I would rather Yellowstone erupt. Because that's more of a nature act of God sort of thing, as opposed to bad decisions being made that end up becoming consequential for the entire planet. So no one should want a war. But if we can't get to the heart of the problem and truly ask serious questions here, why are we doing this when the country asking us to do it can do it themselves with the same level of weaponry that we have? I mean, seriously, nuclear weapons is a nuclear weapon. They have nuclear power. Israel has nuclear power. Leave us out of it. I mean, I'm just lost in the melee of why we did it for them when they could have done it on their own accord. And then whatever backlash they catch it. But, why get someone else to do your dirty work again? This is crazy. At least get our Americans up out of there. Don't leave them over there. All right, moving on.
He wasn't a pacifist. He killed General Soleimani. He killed Baghdadi, the head of ISIS, and went after them ferociously. He attacked Syria when they killed American troops. He dropped a massive bomb in Afghanistan. It wasn't like he never deployed the American military. And again, here, what he would argue, and has been arguing, is he's not declared war on anybody. What he's done is very specifically target Iran's nuclear capability because of latest reports coming out, which said they had taken the enrichment of their uranium stocks from 3.5% or in Syria in December, where the people themselves rise up And if that was to happen, why would that be a bad thing?
Okay, so you're asking a lot of questions here. So first and foremost, the idea that you have to formally declare war on like a piece of paper in order for war to happen is a little bit ridiculous. I mean, he dropped bombs. He dropped bombs in Iran. So yes, we are a part of this war, whether we like it or not. Iran is now speaking and saying that they're going to shut down the Hormuz Strait. There's going to be impact on oil.
Why would they do that? Why would?
Let me be clear. We have laws here in the United States of America. We have 3 separate but co-equal branches of power, where it seems like right now the executive and legislative branch is pretty much running the country, despite whatever the judicial branch has to say, even though the judicial branch cannot be fired or terminated by the executive branch. That's how it works. Secondly, you're supposed to get congressional approval before you do anything that could look like an act of war. So why didn't they get Congress to approve it? How are we going to sit here and force people to follow our laws when we don't follow our own laws? And doesn't the Bible say that thou art to obey the laws of the land? Am I missing something here? You see, like I said, whether you're Democrat or Republican is irrelevant, because it will be irrelevant on Judgment Day. It's a matter of decision making. We have laws in place for a reason, to maintain some level of civility and order. You know, God is not the author of confusion and chaos. He's just not. Even if you want to say, okay, we're defending ourselves and our allies for a reasonable, justifiable cause, you need to be able to do it the right way. And that would have required the congressional legislative branch of our government to approve that. And they didn't do that. So this is what happens when you go rogue, because reasons. So, that's why is that problem not, why is that fundamental fact not being brought up? Because it's not a problem. We have that law for a reason. I mean, is anyone thinking about, somehow merging the 3 branches of government together? Is that going to happen? How much more worse is this going to get? Okay, go on.
Why would they do that when the main victim of doing that would be Iran? I mean, 50% of China, of the traffic of stuff through there is for China, which is one of their allies.
Don't care, not my business. The point that I'm making here is that to make the assumption that you can just drop bombs on a country and then say, well, you know what, we didn't formally declare war, is patently ridiculous. I think that is just patently ridiculous.
What about when he killed General Soleimani, one of Iran's top military commanders?
Sure, an assassination, a strike, and that, of course, came with some risk. It's a little bit different to be flying out B-6 bombers in the middle of the night and dropping bombs at the behest of Bibi Netanyahu, which brings me to the second point. The reason that America wants a regime change in Iran is because Bibi Netanyahu is demanding it, and that answers the question as to why there is this split in the MAGA movement. What we are seeing right now is the infiltration of Israel first people, the neocons, people who have always wanted never-ending wars, and the people who have recognized that following Israel's foreign policy initiatives has led to America being on the decline. And so that's where I stand. I am with the MAGA people who grew up, I call us Generation 9/11, who were told that America was going to be rendered safer.
I don't think you have to be a MAGA person to just understand that fundamental fact of, when it comes down to America invoking itself in other countries' conflicts that have, in this particular situation going on, for thousands of years. I mean, it's in the whole Bible. So it just never ends. It has not ended yet. And even despite other countries trying to bring some level of civility and peace, it still has not been absolutely achieved to where we can see the results of this peace. Because the moment, they get quiet a little bit, they get sent to their rooms, put on punishment, and then they come out and they go back at it again. And someone has to start that whole thing, that whole process of the conflict. Somebody's starting it. And 2 wrongs don't make a right. There's nothing wrong with saying to Israel, listen, y'all want to sit here and do all this stuff over here? Leave us out of it. We're trying to put America first. Come back at us when you have multiple countries coming at you or something like that. I mean, we have to be more cognitive of the decisions that are being made that could put countries of people at risk, human lives in general at risk. Because if Iran gets mad and they want to retaliate, guess what? They're not going to use a missile like Israel and the United States can use. No, they're going to use people. They're going to activate what we all know as sleeper cells. They're going to have their, their citizens upset and outraged, and the retaliation is going to be unorthodox and out of the box. We have seen this in human history. This isn't a matter of just opinion here. It's facts. These things can be researched to show there are so many ways to fight a war psychologically, with bioweapons, with general weapons, nuclear weapons, human people becoming missiles, deciding to, for a cause, turn themselves into some sort of explosive device and not care how many people they take out with them. We've seen this in human history. So why provoke and agitate something where all of those options or consequences for retaliation aren't going to go away? And if it's a matter of America being first, that's not putting America first to sit here and do something on behalf of another country that could have done it themselves. That's my thing. Why didn't they just do it themselves? Why didn't Israel just do it on their own? Why are they asking the U.S. to do it? What's the deal? Okay, moving on.
Cleaner. All we had to do was agree to go to, well, ironically, war with Iraq because of weapons of mass destruction. It's all of the same rhetoric dating back to 9/11, all of the same tactics of trying to smear people who are against this war as supporting jihadists. It is not my business to affect a regime change in Iran. It's simply not our business. It doesn't impact us one way or the other. And we also are completely done with the idea.
That is exactly what a jihad is. It's someone, standing on some faith or belief that they are rewarded in the afterlife for turning themselves into a human missile or a human detonator. So if you're talking about a battle of faith that will always win on top, I'm sorry. Because you get to the point where people are willing to do that. How do you reason with them and bring them down off of that cliff? You don't. So this is the retaliation that we underestimate. All right, moving on.
That with this decades-long idea that we're doing it to spread democracy because we believe in international liberalism. There was no imminent threat to the United States when Trump made this decision to do what Bibi wanted. And I want to be clear here. This was not Trump's decision. It was Bibi Netanyahu's decision. And that is the reason that he did it. And we're very aware that Israel is dictating our foreign policy, and we would now like that to stop.
Okay, but you wouldn't disagree, presumably, that Iran has been the main sponsor of terrorism in the Middle East through the Houthis, through Hezbollah, through Hamas. I mean, that's widely accepted and recognized. They've done
things widely accepted. No, that's just kind of...
Really? You don't
Israel has been a terrorist state. Okay, Israel right now is imparting a genocide and a Holocaust on the Gazan people. So I'm really over this idea like somehow...
I don't think anybody is denying what Pierce just said here. It's not denying it, but I don't like the whataboutisms either. Don't circumvent it. Don't try to say, essentially you're saying two wrongs don't make it right. But we understand that. But at some point, when does it stop? Somebody got to stop. Somebody has to be the first to stop, just like someone had to be the first to start. So going back in time, thousands of years ago, somebody started it. And now in the year of our Lord 2025, somebody has to stop. It's that simple. You don't have to, that has nothing to do with MAGA, a Republican, Democrat, none of that. It's as simple as someone has to put on their big boy pants and stop. The question would be, is the U.S. able to get either one of them to stop? That is what the matter of peace is all about here. Getting them to stop. And can we do that? Because, how well is that going so far? It's been, only 2-3 weeks? Time will tell over time. So you got to let more time pass by to really determine whether or not they're serious about trying to be at peace. But if you're going to pop one hand, you got to pop both. But we're not, you can't ignore what the other person is doing that's wrong. Iran has done wrong things. So is Israel. They wanted us to drop a missile for them. For what? Why? You do it yourself. Do it yourself. Here's a DIY moment. Do it DIY moment. Do it yourself. Do it yourself. Don't ask us to do that no more. And hopefully Trump will say, no, neither one of y'all understand what the F you're doing anyway. So I'm saying no. Go to your room. Go to your room.
Israel has the moral high ground and we have to get
That's
behind
like-
them.
I didn't say
We've got to
that.
go after the bad
I
guys.
wasn't saying that.
We have.
Oh, hang on. Look, we can come to Gaza, where I think we'll reach agreement about what Israel's government's been doing there in the last few months.
But it's relevant. If you're going to call Iranians terrorists, if they right now had an open concentration camp where they were mass killing their own people, we would all be saying this is ridiculous. So it's rich to me that people are concerned about Iran having nukes, but I'm concerned about Israel, who won't even admit that they have nukes having nukes, while at the same time they are executing a genocide and a Holocaust in Gaza that the world is watching. So who's the bigger terrorist is the question today. I would say as an American that if we're going to get behind a regime change, it should be in Israel first. So that would be my position. I think the position of a lot of people who are waking up to the fact that Zionism has brought us nothing but grief in America. Can you name one positive thing that Zionists have contributed to America? That us fighting these perpetual wars on behalf of Zionism has contributed to America?
I'm going to fast forward a little bit because I think they go deep into, some Zionistic ideology and things of that nature. But here's his words most replayed here. And I got to say, man, it gets heavier and heavier. And, oh, God, I don't get past his ad. Cozy Earth. Go see what that is. All right, let's get back to it.
American people.
No president in living memory has, with almost zero exceptions, has bothered to get congressional pre-approval for military strikes. We know that. You know that.
Yeah, we know that.
Obama was the big. Obama did more strikes than anybody, right? I mean, Obama never asked anybody for permission.
I'm not an Obama supporter. Yeah, that doesn't make it okay. By the way, like that argument, just so we're clear, saying, well, we've been doing it wrong forever, so we should just keep doing it wrong, is not an argument that's right.
I don't disagree with you about that.
Okay, so I disagree with Obama doing it. I disagree with Trump doing it, and especially when what we're talking about is what could rise to a nuclear war, right? We should have done things the right way. And he had indicated that he was going to wait 2 weeks, and then he didn't wait 2 weeks because Bibi Netanyahu, at least according to the Israeli press, if you believe it, said we're not waiting 2 weeks. We want this on immediately. But I will say you are correct. He's not just doing this because Bibi Netanyahu demands it. He's also doing it because Miriam Adelson demands it. He took $100 million from Miriam Adelson. It was very clear what she wanted. She was clear that she wanted to annex the West Bank. So there was an imperialist plan that was put into place. And unfortunately, when you do a deal with the devil, you're going to have to eventually deliver the pound of flesh. And that is what Trump is doing, in my opinion. And more evidence of that is the fact when he tweeted that there could be a Trump hotel in Gaza. I mean, that was truly, in my opinion, the most inhumane thing he's ever tweeted.
Well, I think it was pretty clear what he was. I think what he was doing there was pretty clear.
And fast forward just a little bit more.
Schism now.
Yeah, there's a genuine schism, and it's only going one direction. And by the way, we shouldn't even call this a schism because trying to dress this up and delude us into believing that the MAGA movement is what has Meghan McCain cheering, John Bolton cheering, has Mark Levin cheering. The literal faces of the Never Trump movement are saying this is real MAGA. Yeah, we're not going to be that delusional.
But you're on the same side as Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez. How do you feel about that?
You're asking about the MAGA movement. The MAGA movement has always been a movement.
I'm going to fast forward a little bit because, like I said, I'm indifferent when it comes to
Iran. I mean,
the actual politics of the, Republican versus Democratic, MAGA versus whomever else. Like none of these presidents pay my rent. All right. They don't pay my bills. I think we have to start by asking ourselves, do these people pay our bills? Are they helping me raise my children? No? Oh, okay. So like I said, when you stand on, before God on Judgment Day, he's not going to ask you who you voted for. He doesn't care. God does not care. He doesn't care who you're voting for. It's not a question he will ask. Amen. The end.
I'm reading an Amnesty International report from 2024.
Because Iran is not negatively impacting. I'm answering your question because Iran's regime is not negatively impacting America on a day-to-day basis.
When the leader of Iran says death to America, why doesn't that concern you?
That's a chance. And by the way, I want to be very clear. Why are they chanting death?
How long they've been saying this? My entire lifetime, I can guarantee you. Well over 40, a little over 25, 35 plus, years. I'm not going to tell my age. But it's been going for decades. Decades. Do they not say that about other countries as well? There's always somebody. This is what I mean by life and death being in the power of your tongue. So they say that about any country they consider an enemy. But who wouldn't say that about it? If you're dropping missiles on them, you want them to just not. Oh, okay, we welcome these missiles. We feel good about this. This is our happy place. I think anyone would be upset if you decide to destroy their home. But do they not say this about every country that's considered an enemy to them, or at least an ally of the U.S.? The U.S. or any ally of the U.S. I think they've chanted that same thing for decades. So, all right, let's get back to it.
Death to America. Why are they chanting that? That's
Because
kind of
they
a
want-
random thing. Like, I know
Because
wake
they
up
want
one day and go like,
Americans dead.
but why are they specifically chanting as opposed to saying, I don't know, death to China or death to Russia? What is it specifically
Well, they
about
say
America?
death to America, death to Israel, death to the United Kingdom, actually.
Oh, okay.
Death to pretty much
maybe
anyone that wants to
because-
Yeah, he
listen to
just
them.
proved my
Could it have
point.
something
They
to do
say
with
that about
our
most
actions
countries.
in the Middle East is why I'm saying that we need a change in foreign policy.
on,
Maybe
man.
it has something to do with just like killing 1 million Iraqi civilians, okay? Because Bibi Netanyahu got on a congressional stage and said there are weapons of mass destruction, and we took that to the bank, and there actually were no weapons of mass
Yep.
destruction, so we just killed 1 million. It could have something, I could be crazy. It
I
could have
think you-
something to do with our actions in the Middle East. The fact that we have 2,000 troops stationed in Syria right now under the guise of saying that we're fighting ISIS, while at the same time we know that Bibi Netanyahu funded the Al-Qaeda adjacent fronts because he wanted to overthrow.
Did Piers Morgan not research this before before he brought her on? Because she's got a laptop in front of her, and this stuff can be good. It's a Google search at this point. We have facts and evidence and information at our fingertips. Did he not look this up before he brought her on? I think if he were to ask her to fact check it in real time, she really could right then and there. So when we get to a point where facts, law, and evidence somehow is still a matter of somebody's opinion, then, we've crossed into the realm of just not even, being realistic or logical or reasonable now. Kind of hard to have an argument with someone where they won't even accept facts, laws, and evidence. Like it's absurd to sit here and say it is not wrong. It is wrong. No, wait. It's absurd to say the U.S. was not wrong for doing this, but they have no congressional approval they can point towards. Doesn't our law say that we need to do that? Our laws in the United States of America says you need congressional approval before you go into any war or do anything that will be considered an act of war. Or especially dropping a missile and bomb stuff like this on countries, you need congressional approval. And no, it's not right when any president does it. The whataboutisms is just causing the distinction between an opinion and a fact to be muddied. Because we're doing the whataboutisms all day. We'll be at this all day if we had to go about whataboutisms. Once again, irrelevant when you stand before God on Judgment Day. He will not ask about all these whataboutisms. So these are things that can be looked up and verified with facts and evidence. It wouldn't be that difficult just to Google this information. The question still remains, why couldn't Israel do it themselves and then catch whatever backlash they get? Why did we have to do it? Did we have to do something they can do on their own? They have the power to do it. They have the nuclear weapons. They have the missiles. They can do it. Why did they want us to do it? It's the question. So being sovereign doesn't mean you're reckless. Being sovereign means you're setting the tone and that you recognize that you can be a leader, not a dictator, not a authoritarianism, none of that. Just being a leader. And by showing others through our actions and decision making, right from wrong to the best of our ability. Are we even putting any attempt into this right now? America first? Well, we couldn't get our citizens, our Americans out of that embassy over there in Iran. Are you kidding? Ugh. All right, moving on.
Syria, and they again expand their borders, immediately take on territory and sell us absolute nonsense. We're talking about funding Hamas. Bibi Netanyahu funded Hamas. There's footage of Bibi Netanyahu saying this stuff on camera. So it's just so ridiculous to me to pretend that they're in some predicament, that they may be eradicated soon, which is why they have to keep funding all of these terrorist groups and then pretending that they're victims of terror, when in fact they are people that are imparting it worldwide. I just think that, like I said, Generation 9/11 has grown up, and I think that our eyes are very clear here, and we recognize that our relationship with Israel has become increasingly problematic. And it always was problematic. So I'll again ask the questions, Piers. I'm asking you because we're having a conversation. Yeah. Name something positive that our Zionist AIPAC foreign policy has brought to America.
Well, I think the positive side of, if you want an answer about that, is that America has been Israel's steadfast ally because it recognizes as a country that Israel has been under an almost unique, multifaceted threat on its border for a very long time.
Let me sum this up because he literally just did not answer the question directly. What was the benefit to the United States of America then? What are the absolute benefits to us directly? of doing anything because Israel said so. What is the direct benefit to us? Do we have more money coming in? Are we getting free gasoline? Are groceries going to be free? Are we going to be secured, our debt to be eliminated? Like, what is the direct benefit for the country of the United States of America? That is the question. It's that simple. So, like I said, I don't watch either Piers Morgan or Candace like that. But this is a legitimate question. How are we directly benefiting here? Are they going to airdrop us millions of dollars? Is that what's going to happen? Like, how is this going to go for us to our benefit? That's it. That's simple. We have an ally. We've had them as an ally. As a matter of fact, they're asking us to do things for them. But if you have some level of sovereignty that we, the United States, want to have here and to distinguish ourselves, why are we lowering ourselves to just doing something that that country asking us to do it can do for themselves? It seems like it's okay. We want you all. We need you all to do this. But then when it comes to the backlash of it all, then, well, we didn't do that. The U.S. did it. They could have told us no. I have a feeling that's going to come about. Yeah, we're gonna get the blame for it because we as the country of the United States of America took action to drop a missile. Regardless of whether Israel asked us to do it, we still carried out the act without congressional approval. And we failed to abide by our own laws here, our own constitution here, to respect and uphold the three separate but co-equal branches of power in our government here in the United States of America. We can hope other countries pick up the concept of democracy and giving the people, the power through their vote and their voice, but we can't force other countries to, carry themselves in some sort of democratic, republic nation. Like, we can't force it. But no one should be looking to us to do something that causes us as a nation, as a country, to derail from our own laws. And then when the backlash comes, they're sitting here saying, well, technically we didn't drop that. They did. And it's still, how does it benefit us again? How does it benefit us? That's what the question is. I would just, if Israel wants to send some money our way, please airdrop a boatload of cash in my backyard. It's so crazy because there's no benefit, but whatever. All right, moving on.
Time from people that want to destroy it, and that you may not see that as a benefit, but Israel has been very supportive to the United States in many ways, right? So why shouldn't America?
I just want something concrete that has been benefit. Like, we got better in America in this way. Like, just name something. Gas prices, just something that the average American can relate to.
You're not going to have a correlation between Zionism and gas prices in America, of course.
Forget the Zionism. You don't get caught up in the terminology and the words, because words aren't that hard. What was the direct benefit for the United States? Period. We're not saying not to be allies. I don't think that's the question here. We recognize that they're allies, but your ally coming to you saying drop this missile here because we think that's this going on. We didn't vet it. We didn't investigate it thoroughly. We didn't ask our own Congress to approve it. I mean, what was the benefit? We cut corners to do it. We broke laws to do it. We literally disregarded our own laws to do that. So what was the benefit? Are we getting free cows so we can have free milk? Are they going to give us a boatload of chickens so that eggs are free? What's going to come about to help benefit us as a country other than us being their ally? It should be a privilege and not something, of a demand. It should be a privilege. It's a privilege. That is how you maintain your sovereignty. That is how you set a precedence on the world stage. This is how you put America's first. We're not going to sit here and that's going to have some sort of direct consequence to us because we invoked ourselves into this. Now we got to deal with the threat of retaliation over here too. Why? If they cared about us, they would not want us to have to sit here and worry about having to now beef up security, NSA, all these things to help keep us secure from retaliation. They should not want that to happen to us either. So if no other country is going to put America first, we got to do that. It's just not running around here saying we don't want you guys to get retaliated against, so we're not going to ask you to do something that we know you're going to probably be retaliated against. That's going to hurt you all as well, because we're your allies and we're your friends over here, and we care about you all. No. All right, moving on.
No, I'm just obviously
there are,
to just tell
there
me
are
one
obvious
thing that
tangible
benefits. What your argument here is like, well, you get a pat on the back and you can say that you helped this country, which was formed in 1948 by pretending to be refugees, if you will, and being invited into the homes of Palestinians, the horrific story
they weren't
of what happened.
pretending to be refugees. They were people fleeing a Holocaust.
Let's be clear. Let me finish my statement.
What do you mean pretending to be refugees?
Let me finish my statement. When I say pretending to be refugees and being invited into the home, you would think that these people were helpless and were going to be grateful to the people that hosted them. People like Muhammad Hadid, Bella Hadid and Gigi Hadid's father, who was an infant at this time in his mother's arms. She had just given birth. They had invited these refugees because of the goodness of their heart. And then one day they return home and their doors are locked and they are told that if you try to enter, you are going to be shot and killed. That is the reality of how Israel was established as a state. Okay, that is not a stain that you can wipe from history. Most Americans growing up actually believe what happened was that, okay, it was a little messy. That's what happens after wars. Borders get changed. But at the very least, they were given money. I mean, you've lived here for hundreds of years. Here's money for your property. No, that's not what happened. They were forced out of their homes at gunpoint.
Listen,
and it's wrong. So we get to be the nation on the back. According to you, the thing that America gets. Let me finish. I'm going to let you finish. It's your show. We can. But let me finish. Your argument is that what we get to be is that nation that keeps supporting it as they continue to move their borders in this way. Now we're seeing that incursion into Gaza, and we are certainly going to see it by the end of this administration in the West Bank. Because, like,
I can honestly say that her trying to explain it to give some sort of foundational context is what's kind of causing her to get slow to the direct point. When it comes to a debate like this and a very sensitive, touchy topic, regarding the U.S.'s relationship and alliance with the nation of Israel. You're talking about going back to what the Bible even puts forward. Not saying that back then, during thousands of years ago, the nation of Israel was established, but you have people who are diehard believers in, if Israel asks us as a nation, as the U.S., to do something, we are to do it because the Bible said so, and they take that seriously. You have a lot of people who take that, the concept of, if you bless Israel, God blesses you. You curse Israel, you be cursed. They take that literal and serious, even though during the era when thousands of years ago, before Israel was even established as a kingdom, the nation of Israel was not established. So when they talk about the people of Israel, it's in context. It was not directly referring to a nation because the nation wasn't established in 1948. So those are fundamental facts and just historical context that should help give more meaning to the scripture and what's in the Bible. But it doesn't mean, I don't think God ever meant for us to just do whatever they say, because even God chastises those he loves. So we serve a God who will chastise you. You step out of line, he has a way of proving a point and sitting you down. So for those God loves, he chastises. We as Christians should also be able to gently, chastise one another in love, done with genuine sincerity, in love, in hopes of having some level of correction. Not being judgmental, but correcting with love. And the Bible speaks on that as well. So would it be so wrong? Because there's no exceptions to that. It didn't say you should correct with love, except the nation of Israel that will be established in 1948. There's no exceptions to that scripture. And God chastises those he loves. There's no exceptions to that either. Doesn't say except the nation of Israel that is to be established in 1948. That's not what the Bible says. So that would go for anybody, would it not? So what is wrong with us as a country saying to Israel, listen, y'all are wrong. Y'all stepping out of line. Y'all doing things that, it's not even making sense. the president dropping F-bombs saying they don't know what the F they're doing. Like, that kind of goes to show that they are not beyond correction. They're not beyond being told when they are wrong. Especially when he drops the F-bomb. No one got mad at him for saying what he said. Now, people are going to disagree. They have the right to their opinion. But it still speaks volumes when even he recognizes when both have messed up. So for anyone else to say it, why is it a bad thing? That's essentially what she's saying here. Both countries have messed up. And we got to stop allowing either country to mess up. And when Israel's wrong, we got to be able to tell them they wrong too. Or we can just play, the clip of the president dropping the F-bomb talking about they neither know what the F they're doing, they're both wrong. We can just play that clip over and over again if that's what people need to hear to understand the concept that both are wrong. I mean, and we should call it out and correct with love and say, we're not supporting you when you're wrong. It's like a parent telling a child, I'm not going to support you when you're wrong. I'm still going to love you unconditionally, but I'm not going to support you when you are wrong. And there is a matter of right versus wrong. So we can't sit and weaponize parts of the Bible to fit our moot point, but not the rest of the Bible. You either accepting the whole Bible or none of it at all. Because even God said, I don't want you lukewarm. You either hot or cold. Pick one. Choose ye this day in whom you gonna serve and what you trying to do. But make the decision. So it's hypocritical to say we're gonna use this scripture in this scenario, but when it comes to this scenario where we might not be right in, we're gonna get mad if someone tries to use the Bible. Well, you're using the Bible to try to justify your point. The other side is going to do the same. But the Bible still stands. From start to finish, if we believe it to be true, then you honor the entire word of God. Not pick and choose scriptures you want to weaponize to fit a moot point. That's my 2 cents on that.
Like I said, that is why Miriam Adelson gave Trump $100 million.
Look, as you know, I oppose what the Israeli government is doing now in Gaza. I oppose the expansion of settlements on the West Bank. I think all of that is completely wrong. I do think America supports Israel because it remains the only democracy in the Middle East, and that's an important.
They're not a democracy. Stop saying that, Pierce. You know better.
Well, they have elections.
It's not a democracy.
They have elections.
But who gets to vote in those elections? Do the Gazans get to vote in that election?
Well, the Israelis get to vote in Israel, obviously.
Okay, so you're basically saying America had a democracy. We had
Israel
laws that said Black Americans couldn't. Black Americans
Israel
couldn't
moved
vote.
out. It is indisputable that Israel moved out of Gaza in 2005, and there was an election, and Hamas got elected. Right now,
yeah,
I agree with
Bibi Netanyahu was on camera saying that they were going to fund Hamas into power. So they orchestrated that because if they wanted to create a solution.
I agree with you that Netanyahu wanted to cause a split between the Palestinian Authority and Hamas. It was divide and rule. It was a catastrophically bad strategy, and it led to what happened on October the 7th over a 20-year period. There's no doubt. It was a terrible thing that Netanyahu...
So you both agree that there's a lot of things that Israel did wrong. That's my whole point in this. Just pointing out when they're wrong. All right, let's go.
One of the many reasons I think he should go. But there was no doubt that the Israelis pulled out of Gaza and allowed them to have elections, and they elected Hamas, and the rest has been disastrous history.
Because the Israelis funded, because Bibi Netanyahu, they funded Hamas.
I don't disagree with you, but they still had elections.
So it's like we rigged an election, but look what the election results show is that they wanted to put Hamas into power. And so when we talk about who is funding these terrorists, the answer is Bibi Netanyahu. And I don't want to get into his corruption trials, but every single person watching this right now should go pursue the documentary, The Bibi Files, because it is absolutely stunning.
I believe one of the reasons. I believe one of the reasons. Let me answer
the question, because you still haven't given me anything other than like you guys get a pat on the back for supporting this created nation in the Middle East. I also just like to say all of the bad things that we have gotten because of our continued relation with Israel. First and foremost, the open borders. And you can relate to this. People in the UK, they just can't seem to connect the dots.
All right.
Oh my gosh, what's happening here? But I want to say this. Okay, we don't understand where all these refugees are coming from. Oh my, where are all these refugees coming from? Who's funding them coming over into these borders? This is what you get when you keep supporting these nonstop wars, when you keep bombing where these people live. And it's not even just a conspiracy, by the way. If you're like, oh, well
actually, you're wrong about this, because the vast majority of people coming into the UK illegally are not coming from war-torn countries in the Middle East. They're actually economic migrants. So it's not true.
Okay, let's connect that. when you say economic migrants, are we talking about like
people who literally want to come to the UK for a better life?
And when Gaddafi was heading up Libya and the country was on the up and up and he was working with the United Nations, and then all of a sudden he warned that if you collapse Libya and turn it into a place where refugees are escaping, that this is going to be your problem, Europe. He warned that. So then it actually happened. And now we're just calling them economic migrants. We're going to pretend
I'm not talking about people coming from Libya.
Okay, where are you speaking about?
Well, for example, I think it was last year, a third of all the people who came into the UK on the border on the small boats illegally, it turned out were young economic migrant males from Albania.
Okay, I think he's kind of going into two different points here. I think the point is you have one point where you do have economic migrants, I guess. Her point is, and I'm just trying to sort out what their points are. Her point is, listen, you got people that are also migrating to other countries because their own country, their home is being bombed. They don't have anywhere to live. They have to move. They have to leave. So what about those migrants? If you want to split it up here, okay, you got the economic migrants on one hand, but what about the migrants that are coming from war-torn countries that have no home because their house got bombed and pummeled? Where are you expecting them to go? You expect them to stay in a war-torn country or in an area where it's uninhabitable? So there are two sides to this. He's saying one thing, she's saying it, but I think we can all agree that there are migrants that are coming to other countries, whether it be for, a better quality of life, for economic, advantage, as well as escaping war-torn countries, escaping the war and the fact that their homes, their neighborhoods are being obliterated. We can all agree. See, there's some level of common ground that can be reached in this conversation. We agree that people are going to leave if they don't have a home to stay at in their own country. They're going to go somewhere else where they can live and be able to repair their lives. I think that's a fundamental fact that we all can agree to with that. Whether you call them one type of migrant or the other, I think that point is being taken, not out of context, but it's being blown up. Let's just come back down to the simple fact that people will migrate for money, for better opportunities, for a better life, and to escape a war. I think we can all agree to that.
Which last time I checked, we hadn't invaded. So look, let me pull you back to something you said, which has caused a lot of controversy, which is this issue of dishonorable discharge. Just take a listen.
I do believe that if war in Iran is on the agenda and that appears so, get dishonorably discharged. Who cares? Who cares? What? Why should you go die in a foreign land? You now have the benefit of 2020. You can think about those men and those women who died because they were pitched that they were serving their country because there were weapons of mass destruction, right? They were serving their country because the Taliban, they were serving their country and these people gave up their lives. And ask yourselves, for what? And the answer to that question is for the elites. They're like toy soldiers.
When you said that, were you aware of the repercussions if people dishonorably discharged?
So just to put this into context, this is like the live Q&A portion at the end of my show. And being facetious, but also being completely honest, that they should begin to consider, and that was somebody asking, what should we do? Like, should we leave the military because they also
do you regret
are recognizing that? No, I don't regret saying that. I don't.
But
regret
the repercussions if you do discharge dishonorably.
Okay, well, I would imagine that the people that are in the military who were going to, if they were going to listen to my podcast and they were going to dishonorably discharge, that they would know the consequences. So it's completely ridiculous. And again, we see.
In other words, please think twice before you take someone's advice to dishonorably discharge. Please think about the consequences of that. Think hard. Pray about it. Think hard. I don't know if I would advocate for that. That's me personally. But I am a mother of two boys, one of which is going to be 17. And the concept of, a draft scares me every day as well. So, but I hope you guys think about that if you're in the military before you just dishonorably discharge. Because the consequences of that might be greater than, you're anticipating. So, all right, let's get back to it.
See this over and over again where people can't answer the broader questions. They try to suddenly peg in, well, you said this one thing. No, the broader conversation we are having.
It's not a small thing.
No, let me finish. Let me finish.
You're basically, you're encouraging US servicemen and women to dishonorably discharge.
You play a clip and I'm trying to answer it. You can't do that. You asked a question.
Well, you're trying to
played a
downplay
clip,
it.
and I'm responding. No, I am. No, you're trying to upplay it. Is what the issue is. This is exactly.
I'm just repeating what you said.
You're not. You're playing what I said, and I'm responding to it and telling you that the broader piece of that conversation, when you have troops that are now asking that question, is they are recognizing that America is in steep decline, that our military comes back and they are treated like dirt. That a lot of these men, and we're talking about decades, white American males come back and they're told that they're racist and they're treated like crap, that they're white supremacists, that they have a different vision for this country. So why are they dying in these overseas wars for Bibi Netanyahu? Okay, and let me again try to answer that question that I asked you at the beginning, which is what has Zionism won
No,
America?
I'm not
What
keep
have these
coming back
never
to the
ending?
same thing.
No, let me finish. Why won't you let me answer that? Why won't you let me
answer if you want
say
to.
what people are recognizing? You come back and there are open borders, and you're told that you are.
I think she meant to say, why won't you let me ask that? And honestly, I mean, he hasn't answered it. Like, list the benefits that we have received and the progression of the U.S. as a result of, I guess, following orders of Israel. How has it absolutely benefited us? Give us a plus as to what the substantial benefit was, other than the alliance. We all know we have an alliance with them. We all know what the Bible says about it. We all know that. What were the benefits to this? Are we going to have a reduction in rent? Is our APR going to go down? Like, what is the direct benefit? That's just the question. Simple as that. And I think when it comes to her, she can debate very well. I'm not going to take that away from her. She is fantastic in debates. But I think trying to establish some context in every response is what, don't give him room to try to go off topic and throw out these whataboutisms. Just get straight to the point. I didn't say that people should AWOL like that in that context. You got to look at the full video. But hopefully people, like she said, if you think about doing something like that, you better think about it. Think hard. Think twice. I personally would not advise anyone to do that. But, think twice before you do something like that. And additionally, I'm not real versed on the Zionist movement thing. I'm not well versed on that. I'm just going to be honest. So that's why I'm not really commenting on that, and what she's speaking of with that. But I think, for me personally, it's just about the bottom line. Whatever we're doing, are we doing it right? And is it right to do? And how do we correct with love as a nation, as a country, when it comes to Israel, as opposed to just doing it because they say do it, but yet not asking them, why can't you do it yourself? So those are some of the baseline points and questions that I have in all of this. But yeah, honey, you got to get to the point with him, because obviously he's not going to let you make the point after a good 15 seconds. All right, let's go.
Racist. Okay, you come back and you're told that you are racist if you don't want open borders. Meanwhile, you're sent overseas to defend Israel's borders. It's a nonsense. And who's funding these open borders? According to Barry Weiss, and I quote, Barry Weiss said this verbatim: "The connection to the refugee is not a conspiracy. That's something that we are very proud of." And she was referencing the organization HIAS, and she says it explicitly, which she said was started by them in the 1880s, which includes immigrants that have come in like Sergey Brin. They are still the organization that's operating at our border right now. Okay, that is problematic. That we have open borders while we continually and routinely are told that we have to defend somebody else's borders. Okay, and again, these never-ending wars in the Middle East at the behest of Israel. Bibi Netanyahu is the one that called for Americans to invade Iraq, Libya, Syria, Afghanistan, and now Iran, and we've done it. We're told Israel can defend itself. Okay, but why do we have currently 2,000 troops that are in Syria under the guise of fighting ISIS?
That's
and like I said, we know Israel themselves fund terror-adjacent militants, like they did to overthrow Assad. And we're done with the BS of, okay, well, they weren't really involved, Israel, in Afghanistan, because even when we fight those never-ending wars, Israel wins. Everybody knows that our boys were out there in Afghanistan guarding poppy fields, okay? And do you know what happened after we allegedly, quote unquote, lost in Afghanistan? What happened to all those poppy fields, those poppy flowers that our military was guarding? Well, the opioid crisis hit America via the Sackler family, who quite literally built the School of Medicine at Tel Aviv University. So we're just done, okay? And there's no way that we're gonna go backwards. We're not going to allow you guys to emotionally condition us to go, oh, well, we gotta protect Israel because of the Holocaust. It is over. They're imparting a Holocaust. America would like off this crazy train.
Okay, for the benefit of viewers.
So that's so I'm gonna stop that there. Like I said, she has a lot of statements she's made that I'm not going to speak to, because I'm just not well versed in the background and the information. I can give my thought and opinion on the aspect of the US, you know, following orders of Israel without really challenging them, and then following our own laws to make sure that, we're doing things the right way, and then challenging them if they have the capability to defend themselves and to, launch a missile on their own and they have nuclear power. Why can't they do it? That's the bottom line. And why ask the US? Why not ask Australia? Why are they asking the US? Aren't they allies with other countries? Is Israel not in an alliance with other countries? Why go strictly to the US for this? That's the difference. You're bringing the US into a problem that it's thousands of years going back to the days of the Bible in the Old Testament. At that, it still has not really come to an end. And no matter how much peace we try to broker, I mean, look at the historical context of it. And speaking of which, I just want to go over this timeline right quick. Before I conclude this video, I want to thank all of you for tuning in. We're getting into an hour on this, and the conversation is deep and heavy on here. But this is the last portion I want to share with you all. This is from the New York Times, and it's a timeline, a recent history of the Israel-Iran conflict. Of course, they've been trading attacks and the most intense fighting between the two countries for decades. The conflict between Iran and Israel, once relegated to the shadows, has escalated yet again. On June 13, explosions rocked Iran as Israel carried out a major attack on Iran's nuclear program. Iran retaliated, launched barrage of ballistic missiles and drones at Israel. Israel and Iran have carried out waves of deadly attacks in the most intense fighting in decades between the two heavily armed countries. The war moved into a potentially more volatile phase when the U.S. attacked 3 nuclear sites in Iran, but a fragile ceasefire later took hold. Iran rulers have pledged to destroy Israel and have long supported regional militias who share that goal. Israel views Iran as an existential threat and has vowed to prevent it from building a nuclear bomb. In the last year, their once covert war has burst into the open. Here is a recent history of the conflict. So going back to 2019, strikes against Iran's allies, and that's in Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq, to prevent Iran from equipping its allies with sophisticated weapons. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just kind of giving some highlights on each point. 2020, a remote control assassination. In November, Israel killed Iran's top nuclear scientist, Mohsen. I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name. With a remote control machine gun. 2021, skirmishes at sea. Iran and Israel increasingly began attacking each other at sea, of course. In 2022, an Iranian officer is assassinated. In May of 2022, 2 assassins on motorcycles shot and killed Colonel Sayyad Kodai. I'm not going to try to mess up his name. He was an officer in Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps. 2 scientists died. Of course, here, aeronautical engineer at a military research facility and a geologist both died in May of 2022. 2023, the October 7 attacks. You have the Palestinian militants led by Hamas, which is backed by Iran, attacked Israel, igniting a deadly war in Gaza. And it's just been a horror show over there since then. An airstrike in Syria occurred in December of 23. Iran accused Israel of killing a high-level Iranian officer in a missile strike in Syria. 2024, a strike on Damascus and several rounds of retaliation, an assassination in Tehran, a pager attack. You guys can, check out this article as well for the information. Hezbollah leader killed in September of 24. Israel killed Hezbollah's leader in airstrikes near Beirut, Lebanon's capital. Iran fires at Israel. In October, they fired about 180 ballistic missiles at Israel. Israel's targets Iran's air defenses as well. And this was in late October 24, with airstrikes on Iran from Israel. And then in 2025, Mr. Netanyahu proposed to President Trump a plan to strike Iranian nuclear sites, which the Trump administration members debated for months. In April, Trump decided to pursue diplomacy instead, recently, Iran rejected the administration's demand to stop all uranium enrichment, but talks about its nuclear program are set to continue. On June 12th, Mr. Trump said there was a risk Israel could strike Iran, torpedoing the talks. I think it would blow it. I think it would blow it. He said, adding it might help it actually, but it could also blow it. I'm not sure which. Okay, so which one was it? And then they have a list of information on their coverage of the tensions between Iran and Israel below: the ceasefire, the type Iran officials survived strike, the enemy within, Iran's nuclear program, exiled Iranian opposition, and Benjamin Netanyahu. So you guys can check out this article here. And I just wanted to kind of go over just the timeline so that you all can see this is going on forever. And at some point, someone has to stop. Who's going to be the first to stop is the question. And are we able to stop? You can't force people to do things. I mean, but are we really able to do this? Are we able to help get peace between Iran and Israel? So that's all I have for this video. Thank you all so much for tuning in. We're coming in on an hour. I think I'll be checking into more of her, videos and content, and we can have a discussion on it. She has her opinion. She's entitled to it. I have mine. Piers Morgan has his. Everybody has their own opinions. But there are just fundamental facts in place, I think, that we can all acknowledge. And that is that we don't want wars going on right now or at all. We just don't want a war. No one's in the mood. We just don't feel like having a war. And it's, getting out of control with the conflict that's gone on for decades between these two countries. The United States has to learn to continuously say no to both Israel and Iran. And if Israel comes asking about doing anything that they have the capability to do, we need to be able to say no. America first. Go to Europe. All right. Thank you all so much. Make sure you hit the like button. Leave your thoughts below. I'm sure many will disagree with my point, but it's the idea of just sparking some conversation and not forcing others to just adopt to your belief. All right. We don't inflict free will, infringe upon free will or free speech. And hopefully everyone can be respectful of that in the comment section. And of course, allow all of these, the content creators, Piers Morgan, Candace Owens, they have the right to their opinion. And we can just disagree if we don't like it. All right. Make sure you guys share this video, subscribe. Let's help achieve the goal of hitting 30,000 subs by the end of July 31st. And I appreciate all of my supporters and members here in the LLC. And until the next one, Lady Luck Club out. Deuces.